Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. In case you hadn't heard, April is National Donor Awareness Month.
That's correct.
I got all of it right. I'm looking to my left because I have the expert here, who is my guest today. Her name is Lynne Samson. She is the Executive Director and CEO of Hope, Help, Live.
Help, Hope, Live.
Why do I do that all the time?
That's okay. You're not the only one. We're working on everybody in the United States about that one.
It's hhl.org. Okay. An organization with which I've been acquainted and familiar for the last few years. Lynne has been here before when I first learned of the marvelous work they do. But as we've stayed in touch, and she more recently told me about some of the expansion of the mission of the programs they have, I thought, let's get back, particularly since this is April, and talk about not just the need for organ donors, but some of the other programs you're involved in. So once again, welcome back, Lynne.
Thank you very much for having me.
As we always do, though, we always start with who you are, try to get a sense of your background and so on. You started as a lawyer.
I did.
Yes.
I did. I actually started as a social worker right out of college.
Okay.
That kind of is my passion, has always been helping people.
Oh, so that accounts for the career transition.
Yes. And
but did you practice law?
I did. I was a prosecutor in Philadelphia for 5 years while I went to law school at night. And then I was in private practice for 15 years before I left and went back to really what I adore, which is helping people.
But it was a life-changing event in your family that...
It was.
My
my stepdaughter, Katie Samson, was paralyzed at the Willows in January of 2000. We were very, very, very blessed to live in this wonderful community of Radnor that came alongside us and wanted to raise money for her uninsured medical expenses. They found on the internet this organization, which was then called National Transplant Assistance Fund, and the mission of the organization is to empower families to overcome the financial obstacles related to catastrophic injury and transplant through community-based fundraising. The community did fundraising through that organization for us and has continued for the last 10 years. I think many people here are aware of the Katie Samson Lacrosse Festival. It's actually in another week. We'll give it a little plug. And it raises money now not only for care, patient care, but also for spinal cord research and adaptive sports and other types of issues related to disability.
I guess you still have to deal with the misconception that many people have that you actually connect people who need an organ with organ donors.
Oh, you are so right about that.
That was my first impression.
Yes.
That's why I contacted you, because I had a friend who needed a heart transplant.
Right, and it's very important to understand that in this country there are 11, 12 organ procurement organizations. That is Gift of Life. It's downtown. Those are the folks that deal with when a loved one passes on, contacting the family to see if they would like that loved one's organs donated to save the life of up to 50 other people. Those are the organ procurement organizations. What we do is we help deal with the enormous financial burden that comes along with transplant and catastrophic injury. That's something that both of these medical situations have in common. They are lifelong journeys with enormous out-of-pocket expenses for medications, relocation, transportation, adaptive home adaptations, vans, things like that.
And is the assistance, whatever assistance may be available, is needs-based?
It is absolutely needs-based. Basically everybody, no matter how wealthy, is not prepared for a catastrophic injury or a transplant. I don't know if your viewers know this, but 50% of all bankruptcies in our country are related to inability to pay medical bills.
I didn't know that.
It is mind-boggling.
And it's got to get worse.
And what's happening is, as we all know, is for those of us that are fortunate enough to have health insurance, what the health insurance doesn't pay for is growing and growing and growing.
Yes.
And those are the types of things. I'll give you an example. We're currently raising money for a lovely woman who is a teacher in Philadelphia. And her name is Liz Fleming. I can say her name. It's not protected because to raise money, you have to have a story. And to have a story, you have to have a name. Her husband came to us because, ironically, he worked in our building and saw us and saw what we did. And you know, she's going to have to take a year off of work. He's going to have to leave work to be her caregiver, even though she has a really good job with the city of Philadelphia to pay her COBRA for the next year while she's getting her transplant at University of Pennsylvania is just outrageous. They can't afford it. So they're trying to raise $30,000. We are teaching their community. They have a wonderful set of friends that wants to do something. This is it. The community wants to help, wants to make a difference. And they say, by the grace of God, go out, let me help my neighbor. And so what they're going to do is they're going to have a beef and beer, basically a beef and beer, at a local restaurant downtown. The funds come to us so that they are tax deductible and they are not income to the patient. And then we take care of paying the medical bills, because even though the community wants to have these wonderful events and do the fundraising, they don't want to be sitting there paying this woman's medical bills.
And you've just touched on a couple of issues I guess would be important to me as a donor. The assurance that, one, my money is going to go to that individual or that cause, and secondly, that it is tax deductible. I'm not just writing a check and sending it to a box number.
That's exactly, you know, and in this day and age, and it's sad, people have become, everybody has become very cautious about when they write their charitable contributions. They want to make sure they're going for their intended purpose. It's not that they don't trust the spouse or don't trust the loved one that's doing the raising of the money. They just want to make sure that Aunt Millie isn't going to end up running around with a Mercedes-Benz.
Too many headlines about people.
Too many headlines. Too many coin banks.
Who were trusted. Yes.
Too much scandal. And so we do that. And on the other hand, because it's held by a nonprofit, and because we guarantee that we check to make sure there's medical need and fiscal need on the part of the people that apply for the money, it doesn't affect the client's medical assistance. So if you've got someone that's on Medicaid or Medicare, it doesn't affect that. It's not income to them.
Is that technically called a donor advised?
It's not. It's different. We're a nonprofit. We're a charity. But it is different than a donor advised, because you cannot, in neither a donor advised nor us, can you target an individual. But our missions are very similar otherwise, but ours are limited to transplant and catastrophic injury. We started out with transplant, and then in the year 2000, 11 years ago, it's amazing, we expanded, before I got there, to embrace catastrophic injuries because it was such a similar mission.
No, what I meant was, if I'm contacted, as I was recently, we both know who I'm talking about, to make a contribution to the son of someone we both know whose name is Jeff. And if I want to write a check to help him to buy a new van or whatever else he might need, do I write the check to your organization?
Yes.
On behalf of,
in honor of
Jeff?
Yes.
Does that go into a special account?
We maintain our funds by region, by the region where the person lives. We do pool them all together, and they are given out to the patient based upon financial need. Many of our patients actually get more money than is actually directed to them, because we give matching grants. When they reach a certain level of fundraising, if they get to $15,000, in the case of a catastrophic injury patient, they get a one-time challenge grant. And so it's not a one-to-one matchup. It can't be. That would violate the IRS rules. It is based upon financial need and medical need. But we try very much to honor the donor's intent.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the case of the woman in Philadelphia, for whom they were trying to raise $30,000 or $35,000, if $30,000 comes in, is $30,000, is that allocated by that individual, so they will receive $30,000 or $35,000?
It is not. It can't be allocated. It is. We try to honor the donor's intent, and if that is the donor's intent, it will go to her, so long as she has medical and financial need. But it can't go to her unless she demonstrates that medical and financial need. But if she does, we honor the donor's intent.
Okay. But if she's not able to meet that criteria, what happens to the money?
Then the funds would be used for other patients.
And I guess the funds are commingled also for investment purposes.
That's correct. That's correct. Exactly. Because one of the ways that a lot of people ask us, how do you pay to keep the lights on? How do you pay your staff? And the way we do that is we take 4 cents on every dollar, and we have done that for 28 years. and no, 29 years. We're going to be 30 years old next year.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
Anniversary.
I know. And then we also, all the funds that we hold, we invest, and we have a 4% spending policy. And then we also have grants and individual gifts. But individual gifts are really, really important to us because that is the thing that really allows us to go out and help more patients. I mean, we are very, very, very fortunate. In the last 29 years, we have provided more assistance every single year than we provided the year before. Last year, we provided over $6.4 million in assistance.
The economy hasn't hurt?
The economy has not hurt, and I think what it speaks to is people wanting to help their neighbors. It's very simple. It's human nature. It's it's not fancy. It is just for the same reason you wrote a check to the son of a friend of yours. It's it's what tugs at our heartstrings. It's when we're at home at night what makes us feel better.
Is it also generational? There must have been some research done as boomers are getting older. And boomers are the only ones left with any money, As boomers are getting older, are they more inclined to give, more generous than they were as younger people when they had their families to support and college educations to pay for and so on?
Yeah, certainly the average size of our checks and the contributions we give has gone up. When I joined, it was probably $50,000. $50 is now probably more like $100. But the way we raise money, it's not fancy. It's the spaghetti dinners. It's all $50, $100 contributions. I mean, sure, we have our occasional small family foundation that will give to a patient who has been, needs a transplant, and they give a $10,000 or $15,000 contribution. We have, maybe 50, 60 of those a year. But last year we had 31,000 contributions.
Wow.
Of those contributions, the average was about $100.
And it is a national organization?
We are national.
Or international?
No. We have plenty of work to do here. We are national, and a lot of other countries have socialized medicine, so they don't have the same problems that we do. But there are.
They will soon.
Yeah, it is one of the sort of heart-wrenching things that we deal with is that insurance is paying for less and less. We have people now that call us and say, I've been told by my doctor that I have to raise $400,000 before I can even be put on the list to get a transplant. And this whole transplant world, it's so important for your viewers to understand, not because it is April, but just in life. There are 100,000 people waiting for organs. Every 13 minutes, someone gets put on the organ donor or organ list waiting for a transplant. And it's sort of like this hidden thing that no one really thinks about it until you hear so-and-so's got a failing kidney, a failing pancreas, a failing liver, a failing heart, and they need a transplant. And these aren't people in their 60s and 70s. These are children as young as 3.
Yeah.
We just raised over $50,000 for a child that was 3 to get a heart transplant. She got it actually when she was an infant, but and those expenses, she has to take those medications for the rest of her life.
Yes. Well, the one I had contacted you about, I think he was 34 years old at the time, and he had cancer, and the treatment killed his heart.
Yeah, yeah. And if people don't sign up to be organ donors, then when people need these heart transplants, what happens is they go and they register for a heart transplant through their medical center. So they go in for the pre-evaluation testing, and they get put on a list. And then they have to wait for a heart to become available. It's not like a kidney where they can get a living donation from a relative. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So then what happens is when someone dies, let's say someone needs a heart at University of Pennsylvania. This woman, Liz Fleming. Now she got her heart transplant. She's a month post-transplant. She's doing great.
Thank
so that's
God.
wonderful. Thank
Great
God.
story.
It's a wonderful success story. And actually she's going to be able to be at her own fundraiser. So can you imagine people walking in, they'll know they're making such a difference. So when someone gets registered that they need a heart, then when someone passes away in the Mid-Atlantic region, which is the region we live in, and they're an organ donor, The organs are procured, and they do a blood type, and then they match. It goes into a system that's maintained by UNOS, which is the United Network of Organ Sharers, and that system analyzes the blood type, the age, the illness, and then the recipient's age, illness, and how long they've been on the waiting list. And besides the blood type, there's different characteristics of the blood that have to match up. And then they see if there's anyone on the list in this region that could use the heart. And then, you know, everyone's seen the stories. They fly the heart from one hospital to the other.
Yes.
And then the person that needs the heart is called in. So they have to live very near a transplant
A question
center.
occurs to me because of a recent headline, and I'm sure other people wonder as well. You go on a list, but who manages the list? And if you happen to be a prominent person, a politician, a civic leader, a big entertainer, or so on, as was the case with Dick Cheney, for example. You know,
Dick Cheney and
recently
Steve Jobs
a lot of
has been
people
another
talking
one.
about, well, it's Dick Cheney, so he probably went to the top of the list.
That is a myth.
Does that happen?
No,
It does not
it
happen.
is absolutely a myth. The list is maintained by the United Network of Organ Sharers. There is incredibly strict, well-monitored, well-regulated, undisputable ways of getting organs that you can't bypass the system. What you can do is, if you're Steve Jobs and you can afford it, or if you're Dick Cheney, you can afford it, you can get listed in more than one region. So rather than just being listed at University of Pennsylvania,
Right.
you can get listed. I'll give you the case of Steve Jobs. He didn't get his transplant out in California, he got it in Tennessee because he was listed at a center in that region. So you can be multiple listed in as many regions as
It
will
costs
allow
money
you.
to be listed?
You have to go through all the testing at the hospital, so you
okay.
have to.
And that's the
what costs the money.
expense.
Yeah, no,
That's
it
the
does not cost any money to get listed per se, but you have to qualify by going through all the pre-evaluation testing to make sure that you're like for a liver candidate. You know, nothing against Steve Jobs. They want to make sure that you're not, you know, a drinker or something like that.
Well, let me go to another myth then. I have had prostate cancer. I know I can't donate blood. I think that's still the case, even though I'm more than 10 years out, thank God.
Yes.
Could I be a donor, even though
Yeah.
I've had cancer?
And just in the bigger picture, organ donation, we would love it to be as commonplace as blood donation, because it is the same thing. It's perpetuating the gift of life. You know, we have a very common humanity. The only thing that ties us together is our common humanity, and being able to pass that along and help other people with what we can is what makes life worthwhile. In answer to your question, as far as I understand, it is only people with HIV and certain types of cancers that cannot give. But what I do know is that even if the part of your body that had the cancer cannot be used for organ donation, there are so many parts of the body, whether it's tissues or corneas or eyes or cochlear ear transplants, that can be donated, that if you are a registered donor, that decision will be made by the doctors who will analyze your blood, your tissue at the time of your death and decide what is appropriate to be used. But it can go up, you know, over 50 ways. And it's just, I mean, if you hear the stories of the recipients, like this little girl that's 3 years old that has the heart of someone else that passed away, and the love they have for that family,
I'm sure,
that made that decision or honored the decision of the deceased.
Do they know the family?
Yes.
Do they have the identity?
After
or is
a
that an
year,
option?
After a year, it is the choice of both parties as to whether they get in touch or not. And, you know, many do, and the stories are
I can imagine.
There's such closure and such catharsis for the family that did the donation, and such, you know, seeing their loved one live on.
Yes.
It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing.
Let's deal with another myth. I'll go for three.
Yeah.
Right? Religious scruples. Are there any significant religious scruples in any of the faiths?
Like I said,
that are an impediment to...
I was thinking about this morning. You know, again, I would say organ donation surpasses, not surpasses isn't the right word. There is no religious tradition that does not embrace organ donation. It is a matter of common humanity. And that is the reason that all major religions embrace organ donation as something that they believe in, they condone, they support, they embrace. So it is absolutely something that ties us all together. It really is.
Do you see the day, this is a way out question that just occurred to me, do you see, because of all the marvelous work that's being done, now they can make an ear in a
Petri dish.
Petri dish, and I'm sure they're working with other organs as well. And as they find ways to use stem cells and so on so that we can regenerate our own bodies.
Yeah.
Do you see the day, in maybe your lifetime, probably not mine, when we won't have a need for organ donors?
I really don't. I think we are still a ways away from, I think we're really decades away from that. But, you know, I'm not in the medical profession. I just, all I know is
The
that we are
science
lucky.
seems to be accelerating.
Yeah, we are very fortunate to live in a country where now we are really embracing new science, experimental science. But we also live in a country, blessedly, where we do not allow things to go to market until they have been tested and tested and tested and shown to work. I mean, the reason this organization was started in 1983, heart transplants were experimental. And Jack Koff was a surgeon at Temple who knew how to do heart transplants, and he said, I want to save people's lives. And his wife said, well, I will raise the money for it. And she went out to the community and said, if you can do enough surgeries and show that it's efficacious and that it is saving lives, then Medicare will cover it, and once Medicare covers it, all insurances will cover it. And sure enough, he wasn't the only one, but once they paid for the number of experimental procedures and showed that they actually worked, that people lived, that they had a quality of life, then insurance would pay for it because they realized that it's not just experimental.
Was it DeBakey in Texas who did the first heart transplant?
I don't remember the name.
I'm almost sure it was DeBakey, I think, in Texas.
Might have been.
You check that out.
I will check that out.
It's got to be in your file somewhere.
Yeah.
Speaking of files, you obviously use some of those 4 pennies you take out of every dollar for some educational and promotional materials. What do we have here?
Well, one of the things we really encourage our clients to do, our transplant families, is when they're doing fundraising, when they have a fundraiser in the community, we encourage them. And let me tell you, our fundraisers go from everything from spaghetti dinners all the way up to high-end golf outings. But we encourage them also to have an organ donor awareness table because people who come to the event, they know that their loved one, this person they like, needs an organ. What a better time to educate people about the importance of being an organ donor. So what we do is we provide for them, we will provide bracelets, awareness bracelets, bumper stickers, organ donor awareness cards, and a document that talks about the myths and facts related to donation. One of the really important things for people to know is this is an organ donation card. The way people can become an organ donor several ways. They can sign that card and carry it around with them. They can go and register on their license to be an organ donor. They can go online to their motor vehicle department and register in many, many states. But the most important piece is talking to your family about it. We have such a hang-up in this society about talking about anything related to wills, death, anything related to dying or taxes. No one wants to talk about it. But the reality is, if you have an untimely accident and you go to the hospital, you're not going to have your wallet. You're not going to have your license. You're not going to have this card. What are they going to do? They're going to ask your wife. And if she doesn't know what your intent is, that's going to...
So I don't have to have a living will or anything like that? Or does that help to reinforce?
It's sort of like belt and suspenders. It's sort of the more places you write it down and the more ways you communicate it. But if your loved ones don't know it, and it's written down someplace, you know, what are they going to be scurrying around looking for the living will while you're...
Are there documents, templates on your website that someone could download and use them to create a file?
Not a living will.
No, not a living will, but anything other than this card.
No, we have those cards, and that's basically, you know, and this other material. And basically, there's not any other documents needed.
Is there not a national or regional registry, or if I do decide I want to be a donor, my name goes in the registry, so all the hospital has to do is pull it up?
No.
There's a business.
Yeah, right. No, the way it works is you register through your motor vehicle department of your state.
Right.
And then it doesn't, it's not a legally binding thing. I see what you're getting at. You're getting at, when I die then, do they go pump my name in?
Right.
No. The way it works is when you die, they ask your next of kin.
But with all the work that's being done in medical records and there's huge databases and archives that are being...
You're right. That is a business to be had.
There's a little check box.
You, Mr. Entrepreneur, right?
That's
there
right.
We go. Here
little
we
box
go.
you check off and it becomes a matter of official record.
Yeah, I think with the unifying of medical records that are going to be on the internet, and as we get away from paper records in 10 years, or 5 years probably, I think organ procurement will probably be a very different thing. But still, it is such an emotional time when a family is going through that, that even if the doctor came in and said, you know, your husband wanted to be an organ donor, it would be nice if that wasn't the first time you heard that, so that you weren't processing that at the same time as you're trying to grieve his death, right there in the hospital. Because there is a time frame. I mean, organs can only last so long, between 5 and 8 hours, I think it is. And so it's not like you have, you know, say, oh, I'm going to come back in 2 weeks and decide.
Are organs actually purchased by...
That's a myth.
Beg pardon?
That's a myth.
That's a myth.
Yeah, it is illegal in this country.
So when the son of my friend received a heart transplant, there must have been an exchange of money other than simply covering the medical expenses of harvesting, transporting, and then...
Nope. That is generally paid for by the recipient's insurance company. Yeah. And it is illegal in this country to purchase or to pay for the purchase of organs. So there is no money related. The family does not get 1 cent for the humanity of their decision to donate their loved one's organs.
I tripped over the name of the organization at the top of the program, Help, Hope, Live. And as with any business, you must have had meeting after meeting after meeting to try to decide, how do we go from the National Transplant Assistance Fund, which is a mouthful, to something that says Help, Hope, Live, and how do we give that meaning?
Yes. How do we market that? How do we brand it?
How do we brand it?
Yeah. Here's the lawyer talking about branding, right?
How you doing with branding?
How you doing with that, right? National Transplant Assistance Fund, it spoke very well to our transplant audience, but not really. Because when you think about a fund, you think about free money.
Yes.
You think about, I'm going to call and they're going to give me money. You don't really think about, I'm going to call and get consultative services about how to raise money. And so it was really an overrepresentation of what we did. And at the same time, it completely ostracized half of the audience we were serving. Now, we started serving catastrophic injury patients in 2000, and by the time we changed our name, it was half of the revenue we brought in last year.
I didn't know that. That was a revelation for me.
So we brought in $8 million last year for patients. $4 million of it was for those who have been paralyzed. So we thought that it was only fair to really get a name that spoke to what we did. And Help, Hope, Live, it really speaks to what people like you do when you interview me, so that we can get the word out about what our organization does. Help, Hope, Live really speaks to the donors that write the checks for the patients, because they are helping hope to live in the lives of these people. And Help, Hope, Live also speaks to the people at the transplant centers and at the rehabilitation centers that refer patients to us.
So you want everybody to start wearing one of these little green bracelets?
Absolutely.
To make people more aware?
Yes.
And to encourage people to at least consider signing one of these cards.
Absolutely right.
Which I will do, now that I know I can.
Thank you.
As always, it's a delight to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Those who are interested, I'm sure the website was under your name various times of the program. There it is, helphopelive.org. If you've got a few dollars you'd like to donate, I'm sure Lynne would be happy to take them and put them to good use. Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I am Rick Anthony. Take good care of yourselves.